Joe is saying off topic, I don't trade Bitcoin, but what was signaling that a potential breakdown was possible? Well, I don't trade crypto. I keep an eye on it because I just like to kind of see, whether people are piling into risk assets, and I personally see crypto as a risk asset. I don't think it's a risk off asset. I don't think it's a hedge or, a safety play. It tends to move with the equity markets. When the S&P is rallying, usually Bitcoin is doing okay too. Um, in this case, I mean, Ethereum's been relatively bearish anyway, right? It's been certainly much weaker than Bitcoin anyway. And then even looking at, the Bitcoin daily chart, you can see that, we had this consolidation built up between roughly, 61,000 to 73 to 75K. And this is what I posted on Twitter on Friday, that, all these markets like the Nasdaq, S&P, Bitcoin, even Ethereum, they were all at this like inflection point where if things did start to break down, and the S&P, things have been leaning a bit more bearish for the last several days anyway. So the idea was, hey, if things start to break down and we start taking out this support, then things could turn more bearish quickly. And this is what we talked about in Friday's recap when we were looking at the NASDAQ chart. Like, hey, if we take out that 18,000 to 18,100 area roughly, then, we could be looking at liquidation in the S&P as well. And I feel like, crypto is not all that different. I think that, it's a risky asset. And when you have liquidation taking place in the equity markets, you can think of it this way too. There's like this pot of capital, right? You have like a certain amount of capital that can be directed to various investments or markets. And if someone is losing their ass in the equities, and let's say they need to make margin to hold on to their position, they may have money in crypto too, and they may have to liquidate some assets in other markets that may not be related necessarily, or it may not be because they're bearish on that market. It might just be a consequence of getting margin calls on your equity positions, right? So like you can have kind of this contagion type effect, right? Where okay, the equities are selling off, there's money in crypto, and it needs to come from somewhere, right? Like you need to make up that margin from somewhere. So what are investors likely to do? We have liquidity in crypto. So that's one way to think about it, or at least consider thinking about it. But even technically, now Bitcoin's coming down into key support, and we'll see if 60,000 doesn't hold, then I think it'll be problematic. I don't think it's necessarily problematic just yet for Bitcoin, but if 60,000 doesn't hold, and if this area in Ether doesn't hold, right? If this 29, 50 to 3,000 roughly, right? So 29, let's say 2950 to 3,050. If that starts cracking in Ether, I think then things could get more bearish. But for now, this is essentially key support in Ether, and 60,000 to 61,000 is roughly key support in Bitcoin. So, or 60 to 62,000, you could even say, is key support in Bitcoin. So things haven't really gotten ugly yet in crypto. This might still get bought up, who knows. But I don't trade these markets. I just like to be aware of what's happening there.